Evening, everyone. I feel like it's the first day of school. It's a full house. Everybody's, got their sharpened pencils and is excited to be here. Really appreciate the great turnout. I'm assuming that's because DRCOG made it on everybody's New Year's resolution, right? All right, so I'm calling the Wednesday, January 18th, 2017 board meeting to order, and we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. And Connie, if you'd call the roll, please.
Eva Henry, Steve O'Dorisio, Jeff Baker,
Present.
Elise Jones,
Here.
David Beekup,
Here.
Randy Wheelock, Sean Wood, Chrissy Fanganello,
Here.
Robin Kniech, Roger Partridge,
Here.
Gail Watson, Libby Zabo, Casey Ty, Bob Pfeiffer,
Here.
Bob Roth,
Here.
Larry Vidham,
Here.
David Spellman, Aaron Brockett,
Here.
Ann Justin, Lynn Baca, George Teal,
Yes.
Doris Trular, Laura Chrisman,
Here.
Richard Champion, Gail Christie, Rick Teeter,
Here.
Debbie Nasta, Steve Conklin,
Here.
Joe Jefferson,
Here.
Jeff Deacon,
Here.
Daniel Dick,
Present.
Lisa Jones, Laura Brown, Lynette Kelsey, Scott Norquist, Saoirse Karis-Graves, Casey Brown,
Here.
Ron Rakowski, TJ Gordon, Mike Hillman, Brad Weasley, Shakti, Jerry Bean, Phil Cernanek,
Present.
Jackie Millay, Joan Peck, Ashley Stolzman, Connie Sullivan, Colleen Whitlow, Deborah Jerome, Sean Foray, Chris Larson, Kyle Mullica,
Here.
John Dyack, Sally Daigle, Gary Howard, Rita Dozal, Heidi Williams, Eric Montoya, Herb Atchison, Joyce J., Adam Zarin, Deborah Perkins-Smith, Bill Van Meter. And we have a quorum.
All right, we have a quorum, and I want to take the opportunity to welcome some of the new members and alternates that have been named to the DRCOG board. You can tell that the counties recently swore in new commissioners and reorganized themselves because most of them are county commissioners. But Steve O'Dorisio is the new alternate for Adams County and is here tonight. Thank you for joining us. And Jeff Baker was announced last time, but he's the new member for Arapahoe, and he's here. I don't think either of the Clear Creek County representatives are here yet. Maybe we'll welcome them if they do come, but Randy Wheelock is the new member, and Sean Wood is the new alternate. Earl Holen is the new alternate for Cherry Hills Village. Did I pronounce that right? Holen. And then for Jefferson County, Lizzie Zabo is the new member, and Casey Ty, who is here tonight, is the new alternate. So thanks for joining us. So I would like at this time to entertain a motion to approve the agenda. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We have an agenda. So I'll begin with my report by talking about what the Regional Transportation Committee did at its meeting yesterday. And RTC approved unanimously with basically no discussion 3 items, and that was approving the proposed action by staff regarding the FY 2016 project delays for TIP projects, which we will consider tonight. The proposed updates to the transportation planning in the Denver region, which we will also see tonight. And then also they approved releasing the draft 2040 MetroVision Regional Transportation Plan for public review and comment, something we will also deal with tonight. On the 4th item, the proposed amendments to the 2016-21 TIP, RTC unanimously recommended approval of the first 5 amendments that are related to CDOT's defederalization pilot program. but voted to table for a month at CDOT's request the C470 managed toll express lanes proposal, so that CDOT would have an opportunity to talk through things and hopefully reach agreement with the C470 coalition. So we will be recommending that we take that same action tonight when we get to that item. So that's all on the RTC front. It is now my pleasure to do something that we don't get to do very often because it's a very rare achievement, which is to give out a 5-year service award. And let me preface this by saying there's only 2 people that are sitting DRCOG members now who have this award, and one of them is Jackie Millay, and the other's Ron Rakowski. So, and he is not here tonight, so that tarnishes it just a little bit. He's usually. So this is a rare thing, and to have longevity at the DRCOG table is to have spent many, many hours in discussion with your colleagues talking about what's best for the region. So it's not something to be taken lightly, and by GSM you deserve a clock if you manage to be here for 5 years. And so Joyce J., we would like to honor you with your 5-year service award. We actually get our picture taken for this.
Oh my gosh, this is just goes on and on, doesn't it?
Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh.
Congratulations.
I get the clock too.
Yes, you do, and the box.
Oh, and the box.
So seriously, Joyce, we appreciate your calm and thoughtful manner here at the DRCOG table, as well as your tenacity. So congratulations.
Let me welcome you into the club of 5 years.
There's a special handshake. She'll teach you that later.
Special place in.
And with that, I think that's my report for the evening. I'll turn it over to Doug Rex for his report.
Great. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good evening, directors. A few things. First of all, I had the opportunity to attend the State of the Cities, the Mayor's Roundtable hosted by the Denver Business Journal. We were well represented there. The 5 mayors that were included on there were included 2 of our own, including Mayor Herb Atchison and Mayor Heidi Williams. Others included Mayor Hancock from Denver, Mayor Steve Hogan from Aurora, and Mayor Mark Williams from Arvada. Regionalism was on display certainly during that event. And topics covered were transportation, housing, as well as others. But Herb and Heidi did a great job, I thought, too, and even gave a couple shout-outs to DRCOG. So we appreciate that too, sir. Thank you. Okay, yeah, no doubt. I just wanted to point out again. Seems like I do this every month, but some of the handouts that were at your seats this evening. First of all, as you all know, we have an upcoming award celebration. Coming up on in April, and April 26th at the Sheraton Downtown Denver Hotel. And I just wanted you to be aware that the nominations for both the MetroVision Awards and the John V. Christensen Award is quickly approaching. So if you have candidates that you feel are worthy of these awards, we would encourage you strongly to enter them. Next is the board open house. We're calling it, at least internally, demystifying the 7th floor. And that's going to be held next, 2 weeks from today, on February 1st, immediately following the board work session. So again, for those members of P&E, that meeting is canceled on February 1st. And we would strongly encourage and hope that that if you can make that event, we'd like for you to be there. We're going to have food. Huh? Yeah, Connie says yes. No, please do. I think we've had, this is our third one, and we've had great participation in the previous ones, and I think they were well received. So please, if you can, that would be great. Board orientation is scheduled for Thursday, February 16th at 4 o'clock in this room. It is typically, those that are new to the board, or those just want a refresher or like hearing me give a presentation, you're more than welcome to come to that. But it's not only open to board directors, it's also open to any new council members that you might have in your jurisdiction, as well as staff. So please, if you could forward the message, and of course we'll do mail-outs and the like as well, but I just wanted you to be aware of that. I could probably promise cookies. Yeah. Okay, Connie says yes. Second last thing I'll mention with regards to the handouts is the data portal initiative, and this is something we do annually, reaching out to our member jurisdictions for data updates. You know, as you know, planning is only good as the data you have, so we really would like the strong participation of our member local governments to get the most latest and greatest that we can populate our databases, and then in turn, make that information available to you all in a variety of ways. So please, if you can share, the deadline for this is February 28th, so if you wouldn't mind sharing that with your staff, your jurisdictional staff, that would be great. The last event that I'm excited about is a Colorado Smart Cities Forum, which is being hosted by Denver South. And if I may, Madam Chair, I'd like to turn it over to Director Millay. I know she has some additional comments she'd like to make about this because she's been intimately involved.
No? Oh, sure.
Okay. All right, I promise I'll be quiet after this. Not really. Okay, so Colorado, I shouldn't lie to you people. Colorado Smart Cities Forum. So the Denver South Economic Development Partnership is, I think, a unique collaboration of local government and the business community along the I-25 South Corridor. And the staff there have really taken a leadership role in smart city development and information sharing. And so Mayors Rakowski, Mayor Noon, and I, along with Commissioner Partridge, and I think that's all at the DRCOG table, serve on that board. They are hosting an event, a Smart City Forum, March 16th from 12 to 6, and have offered a discount, free attendance for DRCOG members and key staff in the group. So the keynote speaker is Gabe Klein, and if you're at all up on the smart cities, Gabe is a nationally renowned speaker, and I think can bring some very good information. So wanted to make sure you're aware of this. This is a save the date, and there'll be more information coming out. But I think it's really important. I think this is what our communities are looking for. It's kind of the cutting edge. And for some of us that are really engaged, and some of us who are still trying to figure out what's our role and what can we learn and how can we bring that back to do better business in our cities. So this is information, and I hope you all can join us there.
Will there be snacks?
Well, of course there'll be snacks. And actually, you know, this is hosted by an economic development organization. There could actually be some beverages service as well.
And one other question. Are counties allowed to come?
I apologize. Counties, of course, are allowed, except for Boulder.
Touche. Director Partridge.
I have a question to follow up to, excuse me, may I address you as the club champion of the Lone Tree Golf Club?
Oh.
Yeah.
Acting chairman.
Do tell.
Yes.
Or acting executive
Yes,
director.
you can.
It's golf and tennis.
I have to tell you, yes. I go to pull into a parking spot today, and it said, reserved for Doug Rex. And I'm going, there can only be one Doug Rex. So congratulations. That's great.
No, thank you, sir, very much.
That was one thing, but the other is for the new member orientation. Is that also for council people or commissioners who are not directors or alternates?
Correct. Yes, all the above. Yep. One more thing. This is hot off the press. Would like to recognize Director Pfeiffer. He's been appointed to the FCC Intergovernmental Advisory Committee. He's one of 4 municipal officials to be appointed throughout the country, which is that's awesome. The IAC, for those who are not familiar, provides guidance and expertise and recommendations to the full commission on a range of telecommunication issues. So, congratulations, Bob.
Very good.
And that's it for me, Madam Chair.
Wonderful. And I noticed Randy Willock just joined us from Clear Creek County. Thank you so much. Great to have you here. All right, so moving right along, we are now at the portion of the meeting for public comment. If anyone in the audience would like to address the board for 3 minutes, preferably on a topic for which there hasn't been a prior public hearing. Do we have any takers? All right, we just saved 45 minutes. Moving on to the consent agenda then. On the consent agenda, we have the minutes from the December 7th meeting and the annual designation of location for posting notice of meetings.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We move on to our action agenda, which we begin with the long anticipated, but only for about 3 years, adoption of MetroVision, discussion on adoption. And we've been waiting for this for a very long time. And we look forward to, Brad, perhaps your last intro speech on MetroVision for at least a little while.
Amen to that. So thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we are finally here. As noted in the memo, the last time the board adopted an update to the MetroVision plan was back in February of 2011. And for those that were on the board, and many of you probably were not, what was interesting is February 2011, the board adopted the plan. May 2011, the board actually tells us what to do for the next plan. So this has actually been 5+ years in the making. So 5 years later, you have a draft before you this evening. I don't have a formal presentation, but I do want to hit kind of a few highlights, kind of maybe orient you to what's in the packet, because there's a lot of things there, and talk a little bit about maybe next steps as well. Immediately behind the memo, you'll find a couple of attachments. There's a red line version of the plan. The red line reflects some staff revisions that were discussed at the January work session. Those staff revisions really came from the public comment and even some continued conversation, particularly with our member governments, after the public review draft was sent out and the public comment period closed. In addition to those conversations, actually what happened at the work session, if you weren't there, is the directors worked from the beginning to the back to sort of make sure that the staff proposed revisions worked for folks, but there were also some specific revisions that came directly from the directors in terms of some new wording, and there was also a few instances where the directors told us as staff, we kind of feel like there's an omission here. I think you could help from a clarity perspective if you just put a paragraph or two in the draft without actually kind of coming up with specific language in the meeting. So when you see highlighted, yellow highlighted text in the attachment, that means either the directors, you yourself came up with the language in the meeting, or it was something that you gave staff some leeway to kind of come up with some language that might work for, as I mentioned, addressing some omissions. The packet also includes a whole ton of links, largely for reference. Most of that content is really related to summarizing the public review and comment that we heard during that public comment period. You'll see a link that takes you to every set of comments that the board received in their sort of original format. You also recall that there was a public hearing on this plan back in November, and so staff prepared a summary of that oral testimony for you. One of the things that we also did, because we got so much volume in terms of comments, staff took a whack at basically taking each of those comments and sort of categorizing them as by topic. So there's probably 15 or so topics with a high-level staff response. So I think that's the third link in that set of bullets. We also received, as I mentioned at the work session, but I'll reiterate today, a small number of pieces of correspondence from member governments after the public comment period. So we thought it was best to put those in front of you as well. I think you'd seen all of those except for maybe the Arapahoe County one, which frankly was in my email inbox and just managed to miss it before putting the packet together for the work session. And then there's actually one final link in the memo as well, and that's actually a link to the sort of a clean version of the plan. So if we accepted all of the red lines that are shown in the actual piece that's included in the attachment, that's really what the plan would look like. So sort of some other sort of closing thoughts. First of all, I want to thank you. I really appreciate your patience. This was a very, very, very long endeavor but there was always a willingness for you all to roll up your sleeves and to get as far as you could in the moment. Some meetings we got farther than in others, but I'm sure as Jerry Stiegel, our Director of Organizational Development, will tell you, collaboration on strategy is not clean and simple. It just simply takes time. I certainly want to give a special shout out to Director Roth, who had the fine and distinction of chairing multiple, probably 15 to 20 meetings of either MVIC or the work session where really, you worked as hard as you could to get as far as you could, and I thought Bob did a great job of accommodating the discussion, but also recognizing the need to be, move as quickly as possible. Those were not easy meetings to chair. A couple things. Yes. One other thing that I thought I would mention, because a few people have noticed this, keen observers over the last 5 years. The first, maybe let's call it 2.5 to 3.5 years, we actively referred to this document as MetroVision 2040. But slyly along the way, we actually dropped the 2040 part, and I think a lot of people were like, what, just wanted to know kind of what that was about. I will say this plan is an aspirational plan that is very much tied to the year 2040. It has targets related to 2040. One of the things that we kind of do behind the scenes that you don't necessarily see front and center is we do long-term population and employment forecasts that are tied to that kind of plan horizon year. And those are all ultimately used the year 2040. You'll hear from my colleague, Mr. Rieger, here in a second to talk about our regional transportation plan, which does its best to integrate MetroVision into sort of those key elements. That is tied to 2040. So we very much view it as MetroVision 2040, but we really kind of stopped calling it that for a number of reasons. I would say one of the reasons is though it's aspirational and long-term in its thinking, we don't want that to be the only headline. There's also sort of a near-term sort of focus of what can we do more immediately to sort of set that path. And so dropping that horizon year just sort of felt like it made it clear that this means you pick up and start working on this tomorrow. And then as I mentioned before, I think if I came back in 3 months and said, let's talk about MetroVision 2045, I would have a revolt on my hands. So I am very hopeful to the chair's comments that we elongate the shelf life of this plan more than maybe we have done in the past. So that was another reason why we really kind of slyly just sort of focused on just calling the plan MetroVision. But I think it's important to note, and it even says it in the document, this is not a static document. There is an expectation that as priorities and conditions change, the board has every right and is expected to make amendments as needed. A few other kind of minor next steps type things, just kind of more for information. If the board does take action and approve the plan tonight, we will put the adopted document up on the website tomorrow. We've done a little bit of sort of triage work to the website that would be ready to go live if you do take action, but we are working on an actual much more robust web presence for the document as well, and that'll take a fair amount of time to do that because we're going to do some pretty neat and innovative things. I also just want to alert you that we've done our best from a graphic treatment to kind of lay it out in a way that makes it as readable as possible, but in reality our very talented graphics folks haven't really got their hands on this thing, and so as you approve content, they will take the next step to create sort of a final print version of the document. So what you see later as the adopted version may look different stylistically, but obviously all the content will be associated with what you take action on this evening. And the other thing that I thought I would mention is that particularly at this past year's workshop, there was the beginning of a conversation among several directors about kind of what your role might be in sort of rolling out and thinking about sort of elevating the plan in your work and also in your partner's work, and that's something that we certainly haven't forgotten. And as soon as the ink feels like it's dry on this, we can revisit that conversation to again figure out what your role is in being champions with this and how we as DRCOG can be partners with you as you work on the many great things that you do in your own communities that really are furthering this vision. So that really concludes my remarks. I'm happy to take questions. As a reminder, in the packet, there is a proposed motion as well as a resolution.
Thank you, Brad. And Chair's prerogative just to start off the conversation by giving a big shout out to you, Brad, and also the other staff who have worked so hard. I mean, we're joking about how many years, but it has been years. And I think at times you probably thought we weren't going to get to this meeting. So you've always taken it with great patience, and we really do appreciate it. And I also want to thank the board. Some of you all are new members since we started this conversation, but I think that the discussions we've had around MetroVision are really the best illustration of regionalism and how we come together and we scrub this document and went over with sometimes painstaking detail, but there was a lot of give and take and a lot of negotiation and camaraderie and listening that went through working through this document together. And I feel really proud about getting here tonight with you all. You know, we're not done with our deliberations for sure, but we did good work and we did it together, and hopefully we'll be able to celebrate that at the end of tonight. But I just want to thank everybody for their participation and engagement in this process. So with that, any questions for Brad or comments that folks wanted to make? Oh, Director Tai.
I apologize. I'm one of the new members, and so I wasn't following this real closely. So I'm coming in a little bit late. I apologize if I'm asking a very simplistic question, and I don't want to open up a bunch of new topics. But my board expressed concern in the comments about the link between the TIP scoring and the MetroVision, and how closely those were linked. And so I guess, you know, there's been just talk about addressing that, and I guess I'm asking for some insight and direction.
Well, we could see if there are folks at the table that wanted to bring that item up tonight. I'm pretty sure that Director Partridge wanted to speak to that point. If we could answer your question by turning to Director Partridge, would that be appropriate?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it. And is this the time you would like me to offer an amendment to our draft?
I think this would be a very good time.
And I know Brad has it, so I'm going to ask Brad if he could pull that amendment up. This is for page 2, the last paragraph. That's where this will refer to, for those who have paper copy.
You'll be getting hard copies as too.
Okay. And I would start out, first of all, as a correction. As Executive Director Doug Rex says, I wouldn't correct you in front of everybody. And I said, you know, Doug, that's one thing I always appreciate, is being corrected on the spot. That never bothers me. I made a statement last time about that staff somewhere had mishandled comments that were in before public comments. The staff did a wonderful job with that. The comments were put in after our comments were put in after public comments. But the difference is, as a member, we can offer comments, amendments at any time, just as we will tonight. So I just want to clarify that, because I didn't want that to be a criticism to staff, because I really think you do a great job, hard work. You're really passionate for it. You are the subject matter experts, so we really appreciate you. So all along through this whole process, you've heard me talk the whole time about not being a policy document. So I've thought long and hard about that, worked with our staff, worked with our commissioners, you know, and saying, what direction do we want to go when we look at that? And we talk about action words, policy words. So one direction, and I think you might appreciate when you look at my copy and you see all the sticky notes, 18 of them, by the way, that was to the meat of the document. And you say, do I want to filibuster and bring all those up? Or would I rather just look at one paragraph to say what we can do? And I think Director Millay had brought this up kind of in the preamble, and I think that was really the best place to handle this. Because when we really know, let's look at AAA, Area Agency on Aging, a big funding source for us from DRCOG. That comes through a different criteria, different setup. There's different processes we go through. So that's why we really don't see it in MetroVision. So really what it is, it's a document that we're going to use, no doubt, as a regional planning organization, but what we're going to look at for TIP scoring. And I think, you know, that's not a secret, but that's our biggest concern. Because as we look at this, we all want to find ourselves in this document. And I think that's the difficulty we had with, 55 voting members saying, I want to see this because my constituents don't look like that. But as a whole, and in the spirit of regionalism, our board wants to support it that way. And to give you an idea is that we in Douglas County, who we are, we're a county of about 330,000. 200,000 of those residents reside in unincorporated. That makes Douglas County the 5th largest entity under a government in the state. We don't take that lightly, so it's a key thing. I just want to bring that forward. It's a lot of our constituents and a lot of your constituents. And the thing about us is to see 90% of our population rest on about 18% of the land. So we are very urban-centric in a lot of ways, and I think we hear it from some of the jurisdictions in Castle Rock, Castle Rock included, Park included, we didn't see ourselves in an urban-centric document. But instead of going through the 18 tabs, rather we just focus on a particular paragraph that I believe pretty well has it there. As you would know, our board had already taken a position no. I said it would take it back to our board since we had a red line copy. We did take it back to our board, did come back to our board, and we voted no on the present version as is, with the caveat that if we could get changes to paragraph 2, we could buy into it. So with that, I know there's some other members probably feel the same thing, have comments. I think we're pretty well there, and I want to know, I'm looking at one area as we read through the red line copy. And the key sentence for me, and I believe, is actually the last sentence. But I will ask for, I will recommend that one more change, because you know me, my wills, my shalls, my improves, those action words. As the document states, the DRCOG board will. Somebody tried to sneak that one in. I'm going to ask that that word be may. With that, Madam Chair, I will propose this amendment with a change to the last sentence saying the DRCOG board may determine. Did you miss that on purpose, Brad?
No. I don't.
Okay.
No, that was not in your,
Fast.
that's a new change for you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me see.
Director Barger, was that the right spot?
The may that we talked about before is already in there. It's in the very...
Yeah, actually, I'm sorry. You snuck 2 wills. I will accept that will. That was proper. So the DRCOG board will determine in the future tip that's a given. So yes.
Okay.
You did trick me.
We're just...
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So I would take this moment to respond to the amendment. I had already applauded our give and take before, and you may recall at the work session 2 weeks ago, we entertained a number of amendments around the urban growth boundary area issue, and this final issue around the TIP, I think, addresses all of the major issues that jurisdictions brought up to us in the last few months. And I'll be honest, both those amendments and this one go farther than I would prefer, than my jurisdiction would prefer. But I think the power of setting a regional vision and doing it with broad consensus is very, very important. And so as we go down to the final hour, understanding that this brings Douglas County and I believe Arapahoe County on board, I have already spoken to Director Partridge saying that I would be willing to vote in support of this amendment in order to bring that consensus. So in that spirit, I would encourage others to accept this as well. Director Atchison.
Move to second the motion.
And I assume Director, okay. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Director Kinich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm willing to support the amendment as well, just kind of absorbing it as we're sitting here. And I guess the one question I would ask, and it's really to the whole board, not just to the movers of this amendment, is, you know, as we I was an alternate. I'm at 6 years of time at DRCOG, although 3.5 of them were as an alternate, so I don't know how that gets told.
You don't have a
Polling.
clock yet. No.
I was an active alternate, but anyway, and I remember in the early time, I think there were moments where we as a board didn't always stand behind the vision plan, and actually at times gave the staff a hard time for proposing things that were consistent with it. And I guess what I want to just ask is not just that we pass this plan, but that we understand that by doing so, we are saying to the staff, this is the document you're using as you're thinking through things that you bring forward to us and propose to us. You know, so we sometimes would say to the staff, oh, it seems like you're picking a side by talking about urban centers. Well, in fact, urban centers were a piece of this. And so I guess I just want to make sure that we're really being clear with ourselves, with each other, and with our organization that this is then a vision, and it doesn't mean that each piece of it is self-executing. We know that it doesn't mean that, and this is emphasis, right, on the fact that it's not self-executing. But it does mean that we speak with a voice, and that the staff, when they go to conferences or when they draft memos, this is where they're looking, and they are empowered to bring to us things that are consistent with that voice. And so I just throw that out there because I think that was a challenge, I think, in my first few years on this board, of saying this isn't just all time that we spent that sits on a shelf. It's actually time that then influences what comes to us next. So as long as as long as I'm on the same page, I'm good with that amendment, and I'm good with going forward. But I just wanted to kind of put that out there because I think it's been an interesting journey, and so I just if I'm not on the right page, I would like to know before I vote on the amendment.
Thank you. Director Brockett?
Thank you, Director Knich. It was well said. It's great points. So I have a question for staff regarding the amendment. So I've only been on the board for a year, so I haven't been through a TIP process yet. So I'd be curious to hear from you how you would envision the MetroVision plan impacting the next TIP, particularly taking into account this amendment, because I don't have a full understanding of the practical implications of what we're talking about here.
Thank you, Mr. Calvert.
Why you get paid the big bucks.
No, it's a very good question, and you know, I mean, there has been a long history, right, between MetroVision and the TIP to some degree, and the MetroVision has always informed the TIP process, and to what degree is up to you all, how exactly that that is going to inform the funding criteria. Because it's a very difficult question to answer because we all know, anybody who's been through a TIP process, that that discussion is coming, and and at that appropriate time, I think it is it's the right time to have that conversation, right? Things change, with regards to planning factors, federal requirements, all that kind of thing too. But I think the plan itself, the MetroVision plan, is comprehensive enough that it allows for us really to bridge a number of spectrums, right, with regards to how we look at the TIP. And I'm quite frankly, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm interested in that discussion when we get to it with regards to the TIP. It's going to be interesting.
I'm interested in it as well.
Sure.
I'm not sure I believe you. I have Director Millay and then Director Teal.
As the old timer, as was established in the group, I did sit through the discussion of how TIP was going to be influenced by the former MetroVision document, and I would say it was a very thoughtful dialogue by all the board members to talk about which things would be included and what we did want to prioritize. And it is, in my opinion, very appropriate for the board to have that discussion as part of the TIP process because circumstances change, and I completely agree with Doug's Mr. Rex, our executive director, comments regarding the situation is different, and I don't think we ever expected to take a big, huge chunk of money off the top to devote to the I-70 project, but when that was presented to the board, and that didn't go through any MetroVision screening process, and I think what this plan is to me is a flexible document, and what we're saying up front with the carefully worded amendment by Douglas County is that we as a board are taking ownership of the fact that this is our intention, and we will be carefully considering it as part of our strategy to fund TIP projects. And I told George if he screws this up, I'm going to kill him. So I'm going on record.
Wow.
This is where I like to remind Director Millay that
That I can turn off the mic.
I defeated a Navy SEAL in my reelection. Actually, I would like to speak in favor of the amendment, and I actually like to thank everybody who has also spoken in favor of the amendment. Director Partridge, he actually, thank you very much, Roger, because I know that your comments took in mind the situation we do have in Castle Rock. In Castle Rock, guys, I assure you, every time I brought up an issue during MVIC and then acquiesced and agreed to move forward, it was because the language we got to was what I saw as aspirational for my own community of Castle Rock. But it doesn't look like that from the outside. We're still a pretty small community. We like that we're a small community. We like that we're not very urban. We like that we're very rural and agrarian in our base. Well, at the same token, like I said, we have 5 hospitals in Castle Rock, and one of them is actually a hospital for human beings. We take very seriously the development of trails, bike paths, pedestrian, pathways, so that we do have an alternative for our residents. Well, at the same token, there's a whole lot that a very traditional development, transportation development, that comes before this board that we have a great deal of interest in Castle Rock. We do a whole lot in Castle Rock to keep our residents off I-25. It's a big difference than when I moved there after getting out of the Army in 1997, when there was no way to get from my home on the north end of town to our downtown without getting on I-25. So we do a lot in Castle Rock, but at the same token, I feel like we were stuck. And like Roger pointed out, and thank you so much, Roger, for listening and bringing forward our views. There were still parts of MetroVision that without these amendments, we were still just a little worried that we would be left behind. So again, I'd like to thank everyone who has spoken in favor of the amendment, and Madam Chairman, that's my contribution to speaking in favor of the amendment.
Thank you, Director Teal. And I see Director Dyack.
Yeah, Parker's in Douglas County, so obviously I support the amendment. But channeling Director Kinich, I've been here 4+ years, and I've seen a change in the board. I think we're more collaborative. Working together seemed kind of challenging when I was first on the board. But quite honestly, in this situation and the things I've learned, continuous improvement, you always strive to get 100% of the vote. And there are a few people behind the scenes who have helped further certain people who were voting no, but I think they're going to vote yes. So I greatly appreciate the collaboration this board has had, and the patience in this process, so we can get to this vote. So very thankful to all. Appreciate it.
And if I might ask if we could all join hands and sing Kumbaya? Because, no, just kidding. Director Pfeiffer and then Director Ty.
I agree with Director Dyack on his, I think we're about the same amount of time. Arvada was good with what was presented, so we were comfortable with it, and I think we'll continue to be comfortable with the edits as well. And why we would is because when I first got on, as some of you may recall, I called this the Gladiator, and this was the ring we all came in, and one of the frustrations I had with this organization at the time was we didn't collaborate, we didn't think regionally, it was all about me, and this is a different DRCOG. And one concern I had back then was when we went through the TIP, and there was a lot of, I'd say it's almost rock throwing, comments about, well, this is based on the MetroVision and darn you, and all these, it just was not healthy for our relationships. And I think that this edit will add some clarity and some role clarity to when we get to the TIP, we don't have those same rocks being thrown that I felt were being thrown between us, because we need to continue for DRCOG boards in the future what we've built over the last few years. This is not only is it exciting to see all the tables are full, or all the seats are full. We should have these more often. Maybe serve food or drinks.
Bite
or
your
something.
tongue.
But to continue the collaboration, because when we're all gone and things change, we don't want the DRCOG we knew maybe 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago to come back. We want to leave a legacy of collaboration, and I think this is a good first step. So Arvada will be supporting the edits tonight, and will encourage others to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Shenanek?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Having been on either the MetroVision Committee or the board for 7.5 years, and having gone through 2 tip cycles in that time frame, one of the things that I've been an advocate for in the tip cycle is there's not this direct connection necessarily, but there's a relationship of being consistent with, but that the MetroVision plan itself does not set the criteria for tip. And Doug Rex and I have been through this discussion many, many times on this, and I think this provides a clarification around that front. And to get to Director Kniech's point about supporting this, I'm looking for that discussion on how we can advocate and take this to our many partners that need to be part of this to actually execute this plan for the region, because I'm pretty sure everyone around these tables loves this place, and we want to see it remain very, very special and unique and to grow.
Director Tai and then Director Brockett.
I was just going to say that this has been a very helpful discussion. You know, I agree with what Director Kniech said that, you know, you have to have vision, or you have to, use this to guide you, or why do it. But I'm hearing, Roger, that this creates enough flexibility, enough recognition of unique circumstances that it doesn't. I can feel comfortable supporting the document as a whole with this addition. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I'm hearing that it does. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Director Brockett?
Great. Well, it seems like we're moving towards a consensus with the addition of this amendment, which is really wonderful to see. So I'm excited to see that. And thank you for your answer, Director Rex. There's so many outcomes and objectives in here. It's certainly appropriate that we have a discussion when it comes time to doing the tip about exactly how we're scoring what to determine what projects get funded. So it makes absolute sense to me. I'm happy to support it.
Great. Director Partridge. What is that?
Madam Chair, not seeing if there's anyone else to speak. I may make a motion that actually require 2 votes, but I think this.
You're going to have to speak up because I just can hear the jackhammer.
Before I move something here, I first want to say I appreciate all the accolades coming to Douglas County, but it is not Douglas County alone. There are many other directors that had a large part in this too. But the real workhorses has been our staff, and I know everybody else's staff, and certainly DRCOG staff. So it's really the staff who really is the subject matter experts. I just carry the message, and I think we all do. So with that, Madam Chair, I think this is worthy of 2 votes. So what I'm going to do is call for the vote.
All right. You want to vote on calling for the vote? All in favor of calling for the vote? Aye. Opposed? What?
I just have a point of order. So there was a motion on the floor to accept an amendment. So are we voting on the amendment, or are we voting on calling the question? I just wasn't clear.
The aye vote we just had was on calling the question, and I think the aye vote won. So we are now going to vote on the amendment, which has a second already. So we're voting on the amendment that's in red on the screen. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. And now we could consider a motion on the underlying document.
This was your big moment.
Your honesty is appreciated, sort of.
take back everything I said.
Don't make me beg now, people. Director Roth.
Thank you very much. Move for adoption of the MetroVision Plan dated January 18th, 2017 as amended.
Second.
We have a motion and many seconds. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. Congratulations. Woo. All right, let's take a second to pat ourselves on the back for that good work. Thank you again, Brad.
Absolutely. I'll be here at 7 a.m. tomorrow, but with a headache, I promise.
All right, we will now move on to the discussion on the release of the draft 2040 MetroVision Regional Transportation Plan for public review and comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jacob Rieger, DRCOG staff. So I might have the easiest task in the world. You're all in a good mood. You just did something momentous. I'm tempted to not even give a presentation, just see if I could get a motion based on your good mood. But to honor the process, I will say a few words. So along with MetroVision, we also have the MetroVision Regional Transportation Plan. This is our federally required long-range transportation plan that incorporates MetroVision, as well as many other components to create the plan. We adopted what we call the fiscally constrained 2040 Regional Transportation Plan back in 2015 while you all were working on MetroVision. That was a plan that's met minimum federal requirements, did the things that we needed to do to keep the transportation planning process going. Over the last 2 years, we've been working hard on kind of updating that plan, adding to that plan, now incorporating the transportation theme of MetroVision into the plan. We weave all of those things together to call it the 2040 MetroVision Regional Transportation Plan. You all, through the board work session, many of you on RTC, our Transportation Advisory Committee, our committees have had several briefings. You all have had recent briefings on the major components of this plan, particularly on the freight section, bicycle and pedestrian, transit, other components of this plan. So with that said, we are requesting a release of this draft plan to begin the public review process, just as you did with MetroVision back in September. If you take action to release the plan tonight, the very next thing that will happen is that our chair will set a public hearing for March 15th. I will note that the public hearing will be both to consider the draft 2040 MetroVision Regional Transportation Plan, as well as the 2018 to 2021 Transportation Improvement Program, which is sort of a pro forma document in the sense that there's no new projects in the TIP, but given the adoption process that we're now on with CDOT of adopting a TIP more frequently, we'll be taking care of that in this public hearing as well, and also the air quality conformity determinations that are associated with both the long-range plan and the TIP. Those three items will be the subject of the public hearing. So again, the motion before you is to, we're asking you to release the draft 2040 MetroVision Regional Transportation Plan so that we can begin the public review process. And if you do so, we will then schedule the public hearing. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions? Director Shakti.
I'm just interested in a little bit more of an overview of how it's determined what goes into the transportation plan.
Sure. I could spend a long time on that answer, but I'll try and keep it really brief. The shortest answer to the question is that you already did the hard work back in 2015, and except for minor amendments, when you adopted the fiscally constrained, which basically means cost feasible, what can we afford with the revenues that we think are available. So you all as the board who were here at the time back in 2014, 2015 did that hard work. That was the meat of the 2040 fiscally constrained plan that you adopted in 2015. Except for minor amendments, that hasn't changed since that time. But to give you a more full answer to that question, we go through a very detailed process with CDOT, with RTD, with others, both to figure out what amount of revenues and total revenues, federal, state, local revenues, all revenues for multimodal transportation do we think that we'll have available by 2040. And then we go through a process to determine what projects, programs, services, the elements that constitute our multimodal transportation system can we fund with the revenues that we think that we'll have available. And again, that's the hard work that you all did back in 2014 and 2015. Once we stepped through that process, that's what became the fiscally constrained plan that was adopted in 2015. As I said, we've only done minor amendments since that time. So we're carrying that forward in this draft 2040 plan. However, I will tell you, just as with Brad, as soon as we adopt this plan, we need to turn our attention to what we're loosely calling the 2045 MVRTP. And that topic, the topic of revenues, costs, financial plan, will be a major component of the next iteration of this document for adoption in 2019.
Second. Director Pfeiffer, I think you had your hand up.
Well, if there aren't any questions, I was going to make a motion, but I think Director Cernanek did.
I was just going to move.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Is there any other questions? Okay. If not, I'll make the motion to approve the release of the draft 2040 Metro Vision Regional Transportation Plan, PRIN 2040 MVRTP, for public review and comment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? The motion carries unanimously, and with that, I will take action to set the public hearing. The Denver Regional Council of Governments hereby schedules a public hearing to receive comments on the 2040 MetroVision Regional Transportation Plan, the 2018 through 2021 Transportation Improvement Program, and the air quality conformity determinations associated with both documents. The hearing will be held before the Board of Directors on March 15th, 2017 at 6:30 p.m. at the DRCOG offices. For further information, please contact the Executive Office at DRCOG at 303-455-1000 or write to DRCOG at 1290 Broadway, Suite 700, Denver, Colorado 80203. All right. Moving on, I think Todd's up next with a discussion of the amendments to the 2016-2021 TIP.
Thank you. So the amendments for your consideration are contained in Attachment E. The attachment contains 6 total amendments. However, according to what was stated earlier by the chair, the RTC made a recommendation to table the C470 managed toll lanes. So not to get ahead of ourselves, but the eventual proposed action before you would be to accept the first 5 amendments in this attachment. Concerning those first amendments, CDOT is undertaking a statewide defederalization program that will swap out federal funds with state funds. 4 DRCOG allocated federally funded projects, which are shaded in your attachment, are part of that program. The STP Metro and CMAQ funding that is part of those projects will be replaced with state ramp funding from the I-25 Managed Lane project. In turn, the I-25 Managed Lanes project will receive the DRCOG allocated federal funds. So that is all that I have for the amendments before you. And again, the proposed motion before you would be to accept the first 5 that are in your attachment, excluding the C470 managed toll lanes.
Director Millay.
So if it's acceptable to the chair, I think I would just like to make a motion to postpone action on the C470 managed toll express lane Wadsworth to I-25.
It is acceptable. I think that's appropriate, and it follows with what RTC has done. So why don't we take that motion now, and then we can get to the other projects. We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. We'll postpone that item, and then let's discuss the other 5 or consider a motion on those. Director Atchison.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the attached amendments to the 2016-2021 Transportation Improvement Program with the exception of 1 item.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? What an agreeable group. All right. All right, so the next item is discussion of actions proposed by DRCOG staff regarding implementation delays of TIP projects.
Thank you. So at the end of federal fiscal year 16 in October, DRCOG conversed with CDOT and RTD to review the project phase project phase status of those projects that had the FY16 funding, and then also including those projects that were delayed for a first year last year. So after confirmation from both RTD and CDOT on those projects, staff contacted sponsors with those project phases that were not initiated and therefore delayed, for one, to find out the reasons for those delays, and two, to assist them in developing an action plan going forward so those projects could be initiated. Attachment F contains those project delay summaries that were not initiated as of September 30th. The report concludes that one project contains a second-year delayed project belonging to Centennial. Last October, this project appeared before the board to seek a variance to continue. If you remember, they were granted a 120-day extension, essentially meaning that they must have their project advertised by this January 29th, or they would lose the ability to seek future funding reimbursement. The current status on that project is they have received concurrence to add from Federal Highway, and they should be to add within the next couple days. The remainder of the report outlines 25 project phases that were first year delayed, and then through your action this evening would approve them to continue. So of those 25 projects, phases that were delayed, 3 have already been to add and are no longer considered delayed. Is there any questions or comments that I could?
Director Cernanek.
Just if you could follow the process so that for those that might be new members here, they know what this first approval of a delay means and what happens if they don't meet some of the criteria, what happens next.
So for each federal fiscal year of funding, each project assigned that they must initiate a certain phase. So for example, if a project with FY16 funding to be not delayed, they would have to go to add, have that construction to add. If they were delayed, and meaning they didn't meet that add date by October 15th of the year, they would essentially be delayed. Contained within the report, DRCOG staff presents options for your consideration that include that we're going to follow up with that sponsor after a certain amount of time. If that project is not initiated or that phase is not initiated by that second year, there is additional considerations placed upon that project.
Director Pfeiffer.
So to clarify the process, is it the second year is when they have to come to us and ask for that? This is the first year only delays.
Well, this report contains both first and second year delays. The Centennial project is the only second year delayed project.
So is Centennial, shouldn't they be here to talk about that right now, or is that a later time? Can you just explain the process a little bit more? As you know, I'm very interested in delays, as everyone knows here.
Yes, you may.
Our assistant city manager, Andy Firestone, is here, and I think, Andy, would it be appropriate for you to talk about this? No. I'm not sure that I understand all the reasons it's been delayed, but I think that the delays are over and we're ready to get started. We would really like you to go ahead and approve it. That's my understanding.
Yes, that is correct. I mean, we understand that it's hopefully by the end of this week that'll be ready to go to ed.
Right. It's my understanding that the action that you took last fall allowed it to continue up to 120 days. That 120 days ends basically in 11 days.
So point of clarification is they're not asking for another extension. This is just
That's correct.
a
It's just a
review. So
report.
let's be really clear that you don't put somebody in hot water they don't need to be. But I heard you say that first part. I just want to make sure we're clear that this is not a new ask to push out or anything like that.
Correct.
No, it's my understanding we're going to be able to get it done now.
Okay.
That's what I've been.
I'm sure you will.
It's good clarification, so they don't need an extension. This is more an update on how they're moving through the process.
Yep. Thank you.
So do we need is this just a report or do we need a motion?
No, we do need a motion.
So we do need a motion on approving the staff's proposed actions.
I could make the motion if no one has any objections. I move to approve the actions proposed by DRCOG staff regarding 2016 through 2021 Transportation Improvement Program, TIP, project delay for fiscal year 2016.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. So now we'll move on to the discussion of the Regional Transportation Operations Project selection criteria. And Steve's going to take this one.
Yes, and this is attachment G, actually starting on page 130 of your digital packet, and the slides start on page 143. So let me get here. Okay, so the purpose of the action tonight is really just to get the go-ahead for our project application and selection process for our Regional Transportation Operations Program. Sounds like a lot, complicated subject, technical subject, but every one of your cities actually participates in some fashion in this, because really what the operations program deals with is funding technology and day-to-day process improvements that allow all of your jurisdictions and agencies to better coordinate the day-to-day operations of your transportation system. A big piece of this is traffic signal systems, your communication systems between, if you have a transportation management center and those traffic signals, or message signs, working with CDOT. So a lot of interaction is really the key to this program, and cooperation between communities and between agencies such as CDOT and even RTD on transit aspects. A pool of funds for this program was identified in the current TIP, and it's approximately a little over $4 million per year. We will be preparing a program document that will cover about 6 years, but this initial call for projects is really just for fiscal years 2018 and 2019, so a 2-year period. And this really builds upon the success of our past traffic signal system improvement program, and also our Intelligent Transportation Systems Deployment Program, or ITS. The Intelligent Transportation System has been really important. It's an important federal initiative as well as a statewide initiative, with a lot of different terms that you may have heard related to the higher technology processes in our day-to-day transportation, such as with RoadX through CDOT and programs like that. The application process that we're showing you tonight, that we hope to take forward in the next couple of months, basically the sponsors will submit applications to us, and the sponsors will also collaborate through our regional working group, our regional operations working group, in the project recommendations. Staff will be reviewing the applications, conducting initial scoring. As I mentioned, the working group will review the projects, and this has been really important for many of your staff participate on this operations working group, because they really do have to work together as a team, because a lot of these projects interact with each other. It's Littleton working with Englewood, or Centennial working with Arapahoe County. So a lot of these are really important that this group works together to help pick the best projects for the first couple of years. In terms of the application itself, that is discussed in the agenda item a little bit, there's certain requirements for these technology type projects that are required, and the key one I'm going to hit on is the federally required, what's known as a systems engineering analysis. I always say it sounds a lot worse and a lot harder than it really is, because really what it is that when you apply for these projects, you really need to show that you've looked at alternatives, you've looked at the different options that are out there, you've considered what the maintenance costs are going to be for that type of equipment that you may be purchasing, that you've thought about these things, and they've been thoroughly vetted before you chose to apply for this specific thing. So that really is an important aspect that when you think about it, should be done for any type of project, whether it's a technology project or another type. We'll conduct the criteria scoring, look at different considerations, look at level of traffic congestion in a certain area, We want to align these with regional level transportation operations strategies and initiatives that have already been identified in the previous document. So there's a whole set of goals and objectives. Some of the really important items are incident management, communications, awareness and coordination. You know, that's the official term, but it basically means, do you know what's going on in your system out in your community when a traffic signal breaks down or malfunctions? So it's really being aware of all those things in your day-to-day activities. So these are outlined in the agenda item, as I mentioned. Ultimately, of course, the DRCOG board several months from now will be approving the projects that actually come to you. So I want to make sure that's known, that this will come back to you. And really tonight it's just to get approval to go forward with this process. The TAC, the Transportation Advisory Committee, did recommend approval at their meeting a couple of weeks ago. So with that, if there are any questions, I will be happy to take them, or a motion.
Director Millay?
Have we used this process before?
Very similar process.
I was going to ask just what changes, if any, have been made from prior years, and also have we determined how, you know, we project what we think is going to happen, what we think the savings are going to be. Have we circled back to actually document what has been achieved through these programs, and what's the process to do that?
Yeah, on the traffic signal program, we do that every single year, and some of you may have seen what are called our traffic signal briefs, little colored brochure, 4-page brochure. That one goes into ultra detail, probably more than any project that we fund in the TIP or anywhere, of, you know, down to the minute of savings and the gallons of gasoline saved. So that one on this traffic signal program is rigorously done every year. On all of our other projects, because right now this program is funded through our federal CMAQ program, that's the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Program, by law they have to report on their projects to the state, or via the state to the federal government, when all those projects are completed. And so we work with project sponsors to complete those when the projects are completed. So.
And the process changed?
Oh boy, that's a tough one, since I didn't help to create the previous one. I would say not significantly, because most of the criteria and objective elements are already in our current regional transportation operations transportation concept document, which I'm sure you've all memorized and carry in your glove box. And no, okay.
Director Fanganella.
Oh, good, thank you.
I just wanted to speak in favor of the program. Denver has certainly benefited from this program, and I think the region has as well. I think it's at a place where we have a lot of really good regional conversation and cooperation at the staff level. But I also want to encourage us, the way Denver has taken advantage of this over the course of time is it allowed us to sort of really be prepared for a smart city. So if people can think about this as a smart city element, I think it's important for us to continue to think about how are we shifting as a region, making sure that we're thinking about this program and our bigger picture transportation perspective that's multimodal, and taking into account the technology changes and advances that are out there, and making sure that we're continuing to be thoughtful and have that continuous improvement perspective from a criteria and outcomes perspective.
If I could just tap onto that, one key point related to that is that's why we really look at this in 2 years, 2-year chunks. Things are changing so rapidly, and so the document will sort of cover 5 to 6 years, just to, you know, get somewhat of a prediction of what's going to happen and to be ready for that. But if we got our technology projects and programmed them for 6 years from now, it may be out of date next year, and so that's a good point there.
Director Sunanek.
Steve, thank you. Looking at other things that are going on in the area of technology, when does the group get to hear from or get any guidance from RoadX?
Well, I know there was the initial report to the board 2 months ago, 3 months ago, but I'll let Deborah from CDOT.
I'm talking about the Technology Advisory Committee that's making this recommendation.
The Regional Transportation Operations Committee. Well, CDOT is very active on there from their TSMO unit and ITS unit, so they participate directly on that. And that's where it's going to be interesting in the coming months as these projects come in, because some of them are going to be related to Road X. Some of them may not be, because Road X is its own, I'm trying to come up with a descriptive word, its own thing, which actually encompasses many of the aspects we've done before in terms of the intelligent transportation systems projects. It's just kind of a different term now. But CDOT's effort is much bigger than the dollars we have here. So hopefully some of these dollars can be used to maybe do some certain things for CDOT if they apply for them. But this alone will not be the, the key funding element for the Road X technology improvements. But we are talking with them very closely on what types are beneficial. We want to make sure we don't fund a project that, as I said, 6 months from now is out of date, and we're going to do something else. And that's why this working group is so critical to get together every month and have these discussions for the reasons that you brought up.
Director Millay.
I will make a motion to approve the proposed project selection process.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries unanimously again. We are getting on a perfect record tonight. Thank you, Steve. So now we get to the fun stuff, which is talking about legislation, because the legislative session has begun.
Yeah.
Which is hard at work.
Yes, it has, and I'll do my part to try to keep you moving quickly. But I did want to, we've got 5 bills on the list, and normally we offer staff recommendations and the opportunity to treat them as like a consent agenda if there's no problems with the staff recommendations to approve as a package. I'd like to do that again today, except for Senate Bill 45, the construction defects bill, where I've got it listed as board direction requested, so we could pull that and maybe get a motion on the others. But happy to pull anything off, have discussion about any bills if there's any questions. And then once you're done, I've got one other bill that we're working on I'd like to talk about, and then I wanted to just ask our lobbyists to give you just a brief update on some of the new developments on the first week of the session.
So if I understand it, the first three bills, which are the
aging bill, the 2 transportation bills, and then on page 3, the last bill there, Senate Bill 57. If you're willing, we could take those as a package.
Oh. Are we looking at the sheet?
Senate Bill 57.
Yeah.
Printed out differently than mine. Sorry.
Okay, so
I'll explain. We can take.
Why don't you just go through them briefly?
Okay, I'll run through them real quick. So the first one would be Senate Bill 11, and that's an aging bill. Related to that, it's a little bit more specific to persons with disabilities, but DRCOG also is serving some of those folks now through the ADRC, and this would be a pilot project actually in El Paso County to develop better coordination and services, but it would also benefit the DRCOG region as well as that goes forward. But we're just asking to monitor this right now because I did want to check a little bit more information with the sponsor about the fiscal note. The first transportation bill is House Bill 1018, which is a bill that DRCOG did support last year, and it's a bill related to regional transportation authorities. They have a mill levy authority that's sunsetted in the statute, and this would extend the ability to use that. And then the second transportation bill is House Bill 1031. Some of you may recall there'd been interest, particularly from Representative Carver on the Transportation Legislation Review Committee in the last year or so over issues whether or not the Transportation Commission districts adequately represent the different areas of the state, and also whether the various issues and concerns of transportation in different areas of the states are adequately represented at CDOT and so forth. And there was a similar bill last year that had a different approach, but it was basically that same issue that the board monitored as well. It made it through most of the session and then got killed toward the end of the session, but TLRC still considers it an issue and wants us to and has introduced another approach to that. I don't know if our CDOT person wants to speak about if CDOT's got any reaction to this or not.
So CDOT has not taken a position. We have our meetings, the legislative meetings start on Friday, so we have not taken a position, but we have been active in terms of the study, providing data and information history to them.
Right.
So we're fine.
Okay. So we're just asking for a position to monitor that for now. We can get more, we'll bring more information back if there is more information next month. Senate Bill 45 is the construction defects bill that I'm assuming you'll all wanted to discuss for a position. And then the one that apparently is not on your list, Senate Bill 57, the short title of it is the Colorado Healthcare Affordability and Sustainability Enterprise. And it's basically a replacement for the hospital provider fee, which I think most of you have heard about that issue at the legislature for the last year or two. Attempt to convert that to an enterprise under Tabor so that the revenues generated from that are not counted as part of the Tabor limit, spending limit. So I wanted to bring it to your attention. We can drop it off the list or whatever you want to do, but recommending that we at least keep an eye on it and monitor it for now.
Okay, so we have 4 bills that Rich just went through where the staff recommendation is either monitor, except for the RTA extension, mill levy authority extension, which was to support. Director Pfeiffer.
A procedural question. I didn't see this in the packet till now.
Yeah.
You know, we kind of have some okay, so I hate for us to take action on something that I just found out about on here. You know, we've had this discussion before. We're not going to take action if we don't have enough time to review it. We shouldn't be.
It is true, it is our policy. The question is, how do we deal with that in the legislative session where all of these bills were just introduced? If we need additional notification, we will preclude taking a position on certain bills before they're through the process. And I know Director Stolzman wants to weigh in on this as well.
Well, let me just wrap up my thoughts. I just think it, you know, out of respect to our communities that may have a position on this, it puts us in a difficult position to make decisions when it just showed up on a desk tonight. If it came out yesterday, we should have gotten emailed at least. We did get emailed. Did we? I did not see it, unfortunately. So I didn't have time to review it. So. Okay.
I think it's a good point. We should just figure out how we want to deal with this. Director Stolzman?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Connie for emailing this yesterday because you can literally, I literally had
Is
this
she behind
written
me?
down
'Cause I feel
to say before
nine.
the last comment.
Short,
So
short.
this is not a response in any way to the previous director's comments. I appreciate.
Thank you, Ashley.
It really is not a response. I literally had that written down as the first thing I wanted to say. I think it's a good idea to separate out the bills for the ones that we just want to monitor. And we'll take the support one up separately, and then take up any discussion people want to have on the construction defects. So I think that would be the easiest way to do it. In my community, we have a legislative position that we have just for the whole session, and so there are some things that I'll be able to vote on. But for example, on the construction defects, our community hasn't taken a position yet, so I'll be abstaining tonight because we haven't taken that up.
Director Millay.
I think some very good points were made regarding our ability to reach back to our communities to have discussion, but I still think that doesn't preclude us from asking staff to monitor these bills and come back to us. So I think I appreciate the fact that you get it to us as soon as you can, and I think you've heard from us that we want it ASAP, and appreciate the responsiveness there. But I do still think we can monitor bills even if we just see them.
I just want to make one point, is we do have a state legislative policy which presumably any staff recommendations flow directly from that document, which we've already approved. So we're not starting from scratch on a lot of these, although it is hard to turn on a dime on this stuff. Director Brockett, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I agree with Director Millay on those other items. I did want to speak to the construction defects one. That's an issue that's of a lot of interest to my community, and the council is very interested, but there's also some splits. I know this is a big topic in this legislative session, and I'm guessing that this is not going to be voted on in the next week or two, that there'll be various iterations that may come through. So I just suggest that maybe on that particular one we might table it, wait to see how things play out, and give us a chance to go back to our jurisdictions a little later and before we take a formal position on that one.
Director Atchison?
I was going to ask that we pull that one separate, and partly because the issue is with this one, the Metro Mayor's retreat on Saturday with the sponsors of this went quite long, was not a happy result, and that this had been dropped the previous Wednesday. We had no notice. The stakeholders that have been working on this for almost 3 years through the state legislature were not communicated with that this was coming or what it was there. And we have, from the Metro Mayor's standpoint, we have serious concerns with what's in that bill and whether or not it's going to be advisable for any of us to support it. Most of our staffs, CML, Metro Mayor's group is still evaluating this. I was going to move that we monitor this, not to take a position, because our understanding at this point is this is one of several bills that are kind to be packaged. We need to understand what the package is, because approximately 20 municipalities in the metro area have gone to the point of trying to fix this because the state won't fix it. And we've all adopted resolutions one way or another, or ordinances or plot notes, one of the two, but we don't have a clear decision. The indication we had as of Saturday from the House Speaker, who is one of the sponsors on this, is that we can't identify the stakeholder groups that they were talking to, and they did not give us a list. Only that we've talked to our stakeholders. Well, your stakeholders should be the same ones as ours when we're talking about housing. But since we don't have that clear direction, the Metro Mayors would not give them a point of support on Saturday, and we're still continuing to investigate it. Our lead person on this is Mayor Paul out of Lakewood. He and I have been communicating. We are trying to find somebody that did participate as a stakeholder to find out what their position really was and what they made that decision on. But my recommendation, very much like you are, Aaron, is that we monitor this. We don't take a position until we know more about it, because this is strictly dealing with how you divvy up insurance litigation. We're not sure that it has anything to do with actually resolving the problem of construction litigation. It's just what insurance company is going to pay and how much. Even that is still unclear in the bill as the way it's presented today.
So Director Mullica and then Director Roth, and then I'm going to suggest we resolve how we're going to move forward.
Thank you. We're one of the municipalities that actually have tried to solve this issue on our own because the legislators haven't done anything about it. And so as a city, we're encouraged that the legislators are finally addressing it in a bipartisan fashion. We have the same concerns that we're not sure if it's going far enough. Something I would ask, and it was talked about that the lobbyist was going to be speaking with us tonight. We've heard the same thing, that there's a package of bills potentially coming down the pipeline, and that's obviously going to affect where we stand on this particular bill. And so I would like to receive that information if we can from the lobbyist, and see if there is something coming down the pipeline or not.
Director Roth?
Not to be redundant, but actually Mayor Atchison addressed in the last comment what I wanted to say, and that is that in addition to having multiple bills that are going to be dropped, this one only addresses the contribution. It has nothing to do with the core problem of the construction litigation itself. So, I mean, this is just a very small slice of the pie, and so I would be in support of monitoring as well.
So it seems like we've heard multiple opinions about monitoring.
Yeah, we could just monitor.
We could monitor all of the bills if that's the preference. I mean, the only one that's a little bit different is the RTA extension bill, which we supported last year, and I think it's the same bill.
Yeah.
But if that's beyond people's comfort level, we can just monitor everything. So I think Shakti was first, and then Director Teal. Director Shakti, and then Director Teal, and then Director Partridge.
I'm curious what the rationale for only monitoring Senate Bill 57 is.
Senate Bill 57. I forgot
It's
what it
the enterprise.
Because I guess I'm assuming that the whole issue of the hospital provider fee is really very controversial at the legislature. It's probably dead on arrival anyway, but I wanted to make sure that you knew it was the bill was out there. It's Minority Leader Guzman in the Senate, and just in case something does change, I wanted it officially on the list.
Okay, thank you.
Director Teal.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chair, move to adopt a position of monitor on all state legislative issues presented this evening.
We have a motion and a second. Director Partridge, you had your hand up. Let me speak before we let you please speak before we take a vote on that.
Yeah, it's kind of a question of how we take votes. What is the percent that we have to pass a vote? Isn't it a certain percent of the voting members, of the votes?
Two-thirds of those in attendance.
Two-thirds. So I was just going to ask for discussion on that point, because let's say there was a bill that maybe was supported to a degree, but we couldn't get to two-thirds because there's so many that couldn't take a position. I just want to be cautious. I think I like the idea of just monitor.
Just to correct it, it's two-thirds of those present and voting, because we had a long discussion on the board, a few years ago, that somebody could just abstain and it ends up having the effect of being a no vote. So the board decided it would be two-thirds of those present and voting.
Yeah, so all the more reason that maybe monitor is the best way to go.
For now, yeah. And if I could, real quick, because I got just one other bill to mention to you, as part of the process for the benefit of the board, I recognize that, and hopefully you would too, that we have this problem every January because the legislative session begins on the Wednesday before the board meeting, and so our agenda is usually going out that day, and there's no time, there's no bills yet. And so we've had discussions with the board and maybe haven't explained them clearly enough for new boards. At least the process has been to inform the board of that problem in January and say that any bills that were introduced of interest that we did want to talk to you about at January, that we would package those and mail them out to you as soon as we could before the board. And then of course we have the challenge with the Monday being Martin Luther King Jr. Day, so we don't really get to mail them out until the Tuesday. And so I recognize that that still creates some hardship for board members. But that's kind of what we get stuck with in January. But one bill that, did we not have the motion yet?
We do have a motion. We're ready to vote.
I'm sorry.
So if we're,
That's for that, yeah.
So why don't we go ahead and vote on the motion, which is to monitor all of the bills presented tonight, and if in the future, Rich, you would like to revisit some of those,
yeah,
I think you bring them back to us, and we will have had a chance to read through them and talk with our jurisdictions.
Absolutely.
So if there's no further discussion, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Abstentions? Wow. A clean record. Thank you, Director Teal. And then you wanted to tell us about one more bill?
Yes, I'd mentioned to the board, I think back in December when you approved the legislative policy statement, that we've been working on a proposed bill relating to the PACE Ombudsman program. PACE is the Program for All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly. It's sort of a program that helps older adults and persons with disabilities stay in their home, and it's essentially the largest provider of those services is Innovage, and so you've probably seen their commercials on the television. But when they converted to from a nonprofit to a for-profit a year ago, we were involved with a number of stakeholders in advocating for the creation of an ombudsman service for that program, sort of modeled after what we do in the long-term care ombudsman. And the legislature set up in a bill last session a working group to meet this summer to come up with recommendations for what that legislation would look like. And so DRCOG staff, Jayla and Shannon and I have been working with other stakeholders to develop language for that legislation, and we're working now to identify sponsors to carry that bill. So I anticipate having that for you next in February.
Director Mullica?
Just several questions. Again, can you address what kind of bills are going to be coming down the pipeline for construction defects? And then I have another question regarding, I realize that the governor has proposed the tax exemption for seniors and their property taxes be cut, and I'd like to get some feedback on that.
I'd like, when we get to that question, I'd like our lobbyists to come up and talk about that in the context of the budget discussions. But actually, I think there are folks here in the room who would have better answer to your first part on the construction defects, because I personally have not been involved in any of the negotiations for those other bills.
All right, so it sounds like Director Atchison can answer that question about the package.
From the, Kyle, from the standpoint of what's out there, we don't know. We are hearing a lot of different versions of different rumors that there are as many as 6 different bills, all aimed at construction litigation. No one has submitted any of those. None of them are titled, at least nothing that we can see, and there certainly is no language that we've been able to put our hands on. We are actively monitoring that through our staff at Metro Mayors. My city staff is as well. So if there's something that gets out there on a day-to-day basis, it may take a day or two for us to figure it out. But we do have lobbyists from both groups down there trying to actively look for those and get them out to the municipalities as quick as we can. The only one that we know of that's out on the floor is SB 45. And as Director Roth and I have tried to explain, that one came out with no previous notice. It just hit the floor on Wednesday and it was out. But we're not aware of any that have been submitted yet. The lobbyists today may have heard some. If they do, that's news to us as of noon today.
Thank you.
So why don't we turn it over to our lobbyists to
Sure,
add to that.
absolutely. Hi, all. My name is Jennifer Castle. This is Ed Bowditch. And just to back up what Mayor Atchison said, we really don't know what is out there. A lot of people are thinking that Senate Bill 45 is supposed to be the construction defect bill. Right. There's going to be a lot of conversations around this issue still. The Senate Bill 45, from what I am hearing, is that it's basically a negotiation that came about from the trial bar and the insurance industry. So this is supposed to be the insurance fix to construction defects. Some of the other issues that have been discussed and that will be discussed have to do with right to cure, having a majority of HOA owners vote to enter into legislation, or excuse me, enter into litigation, and then also a binding arbitration piece. Almost all of those are non-starters with the trial bar. So legislation can be introduced on those topics, but it's not very likely to pass given that we have split chambers in the legislature currently. So, yeah, we don't quite know.
Director Shernanek.
So, Jennifer, if I read between the lines, there's nothing really out that you see out on the table that's going to address the issue to bring the large insurers back to the state to reduce the cost.
As of right now, no.
So, Director Mullica had another question.
Yes, the senior property tax.
Yeah, sorry, that's not, yeah, regarding the governor's proposal to cut the property tax exemption for seniors in half, essentially. So,
right.
If we can.
And I've got just, and again, this is Ed Bowditch. Thank you for the question. I've got just a little bit of a longer answer for that. because the answer started on December 20th when we got the quarterly revenue estimates. And the good news is everybody who owns a home in here, your residential real estate value continues to skyrocket. The bad news is, from my perspective, that this triggers the Gallagher Amendment. Passed 10 years before Tabor, sets the balance between residential and non-residential. And for the first time since 2003, the state property tax administrator and the state's economists project that the state has to lower the residential assessment rate. That creates an issue for any local government that relies on property taxes, that hasn't debruced and hasn't debruced to say they can raise their mill levies, and for every school district in the state. Creates about $130 million hole for the state for school finance. To address that, and this is where I'm getting to your question, the governor today, or yesterday, submitted a supplemental budget amendment to the Joint Budget Committee, to the legislature, with two suggested statutory changes. One is to, in effect, cut in half the funding, the allowable senior homestead exemption. That was passed by the voters in 2000, but the legislature is allowed to adjust the amount of the senior homestead exemption. It has been fully zeroed out in prior years because of budgetary issues. The governor suggests cutting that in half. That's a savings of about $68 million. The governor also suggested increasing the tax on recreational marijuana that is now 10%. On July 1, it's scheduled to go to 8%. The governor's recommendation is to send it to 12% on July 1. That will bring in another $42 million. Those two issues combined would make up for the loss in school funding. This would still increase the negative factor for those of you who follow K-12 education by about $40 million. That was the governor's original November 1st proposal, and it doesn't address that issue, but at least it keeps school funding whole from the standpoint of the governor's November 1st request. And furthermore, do you want to talk about the discussion the Joint Budget Committee had today on the senior homestead exemption?
Right. So the JBC is really trying to look at every option that's out there to address the senior homestead exemption. The one issue that came out that most members seem to take you know, a lot of issue with, or that generated some excitement, was to create some sort of mechanism this year that would cut the senior homestead exemption, whether or not that's cutting it in half like the governor was proposing, but to make some sort of substantial change to it this year and then form an interim committee to study it further to see what can be done in the future for the senior homestead exemption.
And one last point on that, if I might. Your staff, that's me, and your lobbyists sort of, we've kind of anticipated this problem, not the specific one with the Gallagher, but we've known that the senior property tax exemption has become an issue with the budget writers in the Capitol because it keeps growing fairly significant year to year, roughly about $12 or so million a year. It's expected to be for the current, or for the upcoming budget, about $144 million, and they're already projecting that the next budget after that it would be $156 million. And we've even seen an estimate that one think tank has done out to 2030 that it could cost the state as much as $300 million for that. So they're really looking at, is this really sustainable the way it's written? And of course it's a constitutional provision. So I've actually convened or invited a number of other stakeholders or folks interested in aging issues and state fiscal issues over the last 3 months of the year to meet here at DRCOG to discuss this issue from, say, the community and advocacy perspective, so that we could come up with some perspectives and, as Ed was saying, different options for the legislators and the governor to consider, so that they're not just looking at this issue in a vacuum, but they're also hearing from others who are going to be working with people who might be affected by a change like that.
Thanks for that explanation. Any final questions for our lobbyists or staff on legislative matters? Okay, thank you all.
We'll probably have a lot more in February.
And we appreciate you getting out the info to us as quick as you can. All right, so we're on to informational briefings, which means we completed our action agenda with all unanimous votes. Feeling the regional love tonight. All right, committee reports. STAC hasn't met since early December, and we already reported on that. So we'll go to Metro Mayors.
Yeah, as I indicated earlier, we were at the annual retreat. Governor Hickenlooper was our keynote speaker. We also had Senator Vicki Marble was in to represent the Senate, and the Speaker of the House, Cassandra Duran, was also there. I'm kind of giving you a rough draft of what Speaker Duran brought forward. The governor did talk again about his desire that this be the year of transportation. Yet in his budget, he took the 228 funds and cut them in half, and we don't think that the half he's proposing is going to still be there. So there's still concerns there. There's a lot of talk about transportation systems around the metro area. There still isn't anything that he was providing to us in his comments that said that they have a fix or a projected fix on transportation funding. There still is the appearance that there's going to be a number of legislative issues introduced around transportation. There is a couple of groups, the Colorado Contractors Association, the old Impact 64 group, Metro Mayors, are all still trying to figure out what to do with transportation. But everything that they've been looking at so far comes with one missing piece: funding. There's a lot of great ideas, a lot of great conversations, but there's nobody that can identify any funding. Gas tax is basically a non-starter. They don't think they can get it. Sales tax is right now the only thing that stayed on the table with any length of discussion, and I don't see that going away. That's about the only thing that we have any latitude with is in sales tax. But I know we, the mayors who are here, we talked extensively about that on Saturday. We have not got a resolution to transportation funding in the state of Colorado. We keep getting a lot of comparisons to what's going on in Utah, Nevada, and some of the other states around us, that they are resolving this through set-aside funds. Our state legislature's got so small of amount of the overall budget they have any latitude with, there's not much they can do with it. And we don't have a resolution. I would tell you there's a number of groups from across the board statewide that are trying to figure this out. And with all the smart brains that get in a room, we still can't figure out how to get past Tabor, Gallagher, Amendment 23, and all the other things that hold us back from doing any kind of a tax increase. We're just capped out, and I don't see us getting any resolution. CCA will be introducing another bill this year. We believe that Transbond 3 will be coming forward, and again, none of them have revenue streams. They're going to get there. They're going to be likely on the ballot in 17, if not 18, but they'll come with unidentified resources for funding, unless they take it out of the general fund. Well, there's no money in the general fund. So there's still that big issue. Automated vehicle legislation, what's called the SAVE Act. This is trying to get states to take proactive measures on automated vehicles, very much like with the Road X project we have with CDOT, some of the transportation pieces. Many of you remember there was a big spiel in the papers some months back last year about a truck that drove down from Greeley to Pueblo. Broke every law you can think of because there was no driver behind the wheel. But nobody pointed that out to the people that ran it. That's part of the issue of us being behind technology. Technology is outpacing anything we can do from the federal level to the state level. And they are trying to get proactive about get legislation started so that they can at least get some of these trial vehicles on roadways legally. But they're a long ways from it. The standards by the Department of Transportation for the federal government has not even started to get into real discussion about what those standards might be to pass them on. But I think what the governor was saying is that they've identified that this is an issue. You know, they're trying to resolve it. I know I talked to Shaylin Batt after the session on Saturday, trying to also set up a bill for your part. They're trying to set up a session with the RTD board between the governor and CDOT. I talked to them as late as today on that, so that's forthcoming. I've already talked to the chairman, so he's aware of it coming. Other than that, water, homelessness, public safety, transportation are the 4 committees that the Metro Mayors continues to work on. We haven't resolved homelessness either. I know Denver is doing a great job of what they're trying to do. Many of our communities are trying to do bits and pieces where we can, but homelessness continues to grow. It's not going away.
Thanks, Director Atchison. I'll take the Metro Area County Commissioners report. Our last quote-unquote meeting was December 14th, which was our joint reception with the Metro Mayor's Caucus. We changed the venue and invited a lot more regional partners, decision makers, not just legislators, although they were there, and a number of you were in attendance. We did it at the CBRE and down on 17th Street. Beautiful view, good attendance, and really sort of talked up the regional collaboration between cities and counties. So I think that was a success. Director Shenanek.
Yes, the Advisory Committee on Aging did not meet in the month of December. However, there have been several board resignations and some replacements, and it was fortuitous that Director Wheelock sat next to me so we could talk about Clear Creek County in that context. We do have a meeting this Friday, and so you will hear more.
Wonderful. Director Shakti, is there anything you want to report on the RAC?
Basically, the SIP is going through the legislative process, and otherwise subcommittees are meeting.
Great. And who's pitching in for Mayor Rakowski? Director Partridge?
For E470, commonly is what has happened. The toll rate has increased 10 cents, and 5 cents in a 3-year period. We will be looking at a new toll rate structure study, so that's being studied and will be brought to us in 2017. Very interesting, the old toll plazas that are no longer in use, because E470 was the first all electronic toll road in the country, I think maybe even in the nation, world even. So the old toll plaza are looking for a repurpose, so we've had some great interest in that, so look forward to that. And the E470 expansion, which is from Parker Road to Quincy to go from 2-lane to 3-lane, is ahead of schedule.
Wow. All right. And then Bill Van Meter, anything on fast tracks?
Nothing to report.
Wow. Okay.
I hope I trust. Yeah, no news is good news.
There you go. And then Doug Rex wanted to flag something for us.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I would like to draw your attention to item number 17, attachment J, is a draft 2017 federal legislative policies. Kind of poked back here in the back of the agenda, so I want to make sure everybody was aware of that. Staff has redlined that with some proposed changes. If you get an opportunity over the next 3 weeks, please have a look at that, and any suggested revisions you might have, let us know, and we'll include those in the packet next month, which we expect, well, we'd appreciate action on that item in February. Thank you.
So are there any final announcements? Director Teal.
Actually, Madam Chair, I'd like to take the opportunity to ask questions of staff and request an information briefing pertaining to the I-25 PEL study, the famous gap between 470 and El Paso County line. You know, it's certainly a minority of us who are affected by that process, but it's becoming a bit of, it's starting to take up time for myself, the Douglas County Commissioners, obviously Mayor Bean. This is a big issue for him and his community. So a couple of questions that we'd please like to request information from staff that we can contribute when we are a part of the PL steering committee and process. Do we have good data pertaining to the migration in terms of residents of El Paso County driving up to work in northern Douglas County and Arapahoe County, and then vice versa for Arapahoe County, Denver County residents, Douglas County residents working in El Paso County. And then secondly, the Pikes Peak Council of Governments has very generously offered to make this set of road their top priority, and they've included offers of funding that are not yet defined. May we please have that defined? What is possible for them to do in terms of transferring funds from the Pikes Peak COG to the Denver Regional Council of Governments in order to facilitate fixing the gap?
Well, we will certainly reach out to our sister agency to the south to have those discussions. Yeah, I mean, I've heard similar to that, and I know they recognize it as their highest priority project within their region. So we will reach that out. With regards to actual information or data with regards to Journey to Work and that type of thing, I know Steve has been in communique with at least the consultants on that project about exactly that, and I don't know, Steve, you have any additional
we can bring that back at the next meeting for you, and we have also the census information, does Journey to Work data, and we have data on all the people that both directions, that work in El Paso and come up here and work and live here and go down there. So we can bring back a packet of information at the next meeting if that would be.
Yeah, very much appreciate it, guys. I mean, there's an awful lot of talk about this body doing something to be involved. There's an awful lot of talk about, what Douglas County, what Castle Rock, what Larkspur should be doing to help out with the project, and all being requested by very important people who are residents of El Paso County. So that'd be very helpful for us. Thank you.
Will do.
Great. Any other final announcements or questions? If not, thank you all for a great meeting and for such wonderful attendance. We are adjourned.
Steve.